at Indigo. So we call this building a music strategy. Kansas City don't mean a thing without a swing. Okay, why a music strategy is the most important aspect of what's going on in creative industries these days. Okay, this is the latest news from across the world. I want to point out something right now. See this little dot? That's us. Okay, so when everyone tells me, well, we're just trying to put Kansas City on the map, I like to tell them we've already done that. We are on the international map, and we need you guys to let everybody else know that we are. I'm going to introduce my colleague, my buddy, my brother from another mother, Dr. Jacob Wagner, UMKC. And he is going to go through our 4-year report for you so you can get updated about what we've done the last 4 years and where we're going to go with this conference, okay? So Dr. Jacob Wagner.
Good morning, everybody. And my name is Jacob Wagner. I work over at UMKC in the Department of Architecture, Urban Planning, and Design, and I am a city planner by training. And so you might think, what does a city planner have to do with music? Hopefully I will answer that question by the end of my presentation today. I wanted to just quickly provide an overview of what we're going to accomplish over the next, today and tomorrow, basically. Today we're doing the Elected Officials and Candidates Forum, and it's the idea that we are entering into a time of year when people are going to start running for office, and it's time for musicians and music economy advocates to be organized to start putting music as part of that economic conversation. Please note, I did not say music industry, because I think sometimes when you say music industry, people think you're only talking about the recording industry. When I say music economy, I mean everyone who's in the room. Every city has a music economy, but cities often pass policies and make decisions that actually undermine what you do, whether it's live music, musical production, music education, etc. The music economy is out there, but oftentimes the policy advocates and advisors have no clue what you know. And that's why you're here to share your aspect of the music economy with us today. Tomorrow, we're going to invite everybody online to join us with some other music city advocates around the world. One of the benefits of this horrific pandemic has been we started to use the technology we already had to connect internationally. And so tomorrow, we will have Shane Shapiro join us. He's the founder of Sound Diplomacy, which is a premier music economy research team around the world. And then we'll have other Music City folks join us to talk about what's going on in their cities with music, music recovery, and music development. So that's the plan today. After I get done presenting, we'll have the panel discussions, and then tomorrow we'll be online. So thank you so much for joining us, and I'm going to shift to my slides here. And I just want to thank everybody for coming out today. And let me just get started. One of the biggest challenges that Anita and I have had over the last 4 years is people don't know about the Creative Cities Network at all, okay? And you've probably heard of UNESCO. Hopefully you've heard of the United Nations Education, Science, and Cultural Organization. And in 2004, they figured out they really needed to adapt to what was happening in terms of technology, media, music, and cities around the world. And they were listening to a lot of the research that was going on and saying the creative economy is the thing. That is the next thing. That's what's happening. And UNESCO, which is often associated with World Heritage, has to bring that mission up to 21st century standards. Okay? So they recognize people know the brand of UNESCO, they know about World Heritage sites, but they don't necessarily know about all the other things they do. And so they created the UNESCO Creative City Network to connect us back to this global network of folks who are doing this work in cities all over the world, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over some of the basics so that you can become advocates with us for this work and why we think it's so important beyond this room, beyond just the music economy, to be talking about music as a vehicle for sustainable urban development as we move forward. Okay, so music for a higher purpose, right? But we can't get to that higher purpose if we can't get the basics right. And so we have to be able to do those two things at the same time. Thanks to Anita Dixon, we made an application in 2017 to become a member of the UNESCO Creative City Network. Can we get a round of applause for Anita Dixon? Kansas City is the first and the only UNESCO City of Music in the United States. And that puts us on the map again, and it's about telling that story, but also reinventing that story for where we are today. There are about 250 UNESCO Creative City Network city members around the world, and it's very much a mayor's network. If you go to the conference, it is either folks like Anita, who is a music advocate and a cultural industry advocate, and mayors. And our challenge is to continually remind whoever the mayor is how important it is to participate in this network. There are only 9 Creative City members in the United States. Austin came in as a city of media arts. Detroit is a city of design. Paducah, Kentucky is a city of arts and crafts because of the long history of quilts in Paducah. Santa Fe was the first member city in the United States. It's also a craft and folk art city. Iowa City is a city of literature because of the Writers' Workshop. Seattle is also a city of literature. Tucson, Arizona is a city of gastronomy, and so is San Antonio. And Kansas City, again, is the only city of music. There's one other category, which is film, and there's no city of film in the United States yet. I'm sure someone will figure it out and will apply. Really importantly, we are not a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And so if you hear people talk about UNESCO blah, 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 World Heritage, they're getting it wrong. And it's our job to say, hey, wait a minute. Yes, UNESCO's World Heritage, that's important, but the Creative City is different. It's different in important ways. Again, as I said, there's 7 different categories. You can see the categories there. All of these categories have multiple cities in them. The music and literature are probably the biggest groups. I think there's about 45 to 50 cities in each of those groups. And it is an extremely competitive process to become a UNESCO Creative City. You don't just apply and get in. You have to compete to get in, and your application is reviewed by your peers. So the biggest compliment that Anita and I got was when we arrived at our first meeting in 2018 in Krakow, Poland, and the head of all the music cities said, your application was one of the best I've ever seen. Wow. So that's peer independent. So what's the context? We've had over the past 4 or 5 years, I've had people say, I'll say Kansas City's a UNESCO Creative City of Music, Kansas City's a city of music, and they'll literally say, no, it's not. And I'm like, oh, okay, all right, here we go. Have to do the work, right? So what's the context for this kind of work? In 2007, 2 years after I joined UMKC, I started working with neighborhoods. Neighborhoods like Kathy Pursley, who's here from the Dunbar neighborhood. This neighborhood here is the Washington Wheatley neighborhood. Now, the Washington Wheatley neighborhood is basically between 18th, 27th, Prospect to Indiana over to I-70. And you might say, well, why would you start working there? This neighborhood is really one of the cradles of jazz in Kansas City. And yet you go to the neighborhood, you will never know that. The neighborhood will not tell you that. And to me, that was a missed opportunity because I had lived in New Orleans for 5 years and I knew where Jelly Roll Morton's house was. And I could take you today to go see Jelly Roll Morton's house, but not just Jelly Roll Morton's house, Paul Barbaran's house. Okay? Now, a lot of people don't know who Paul Barbaran is. Okay? If you live in New Orleans long enough, you better know who Paul Barbaran is, right? Through the Tuxedo Jazz Band. The point of it is they value the neighborhoods from which the music legends grew up. And the kids walking the streets know who lived in the neighborhood. They know who, and they become part of that brass band tradition. Kansas City has that same opportunity, but we're not doing it the way really that we could be doing it in terms of making sure that young people understand what this city has shared with the world, okay? So starting out, we mapped all the members of Local 627 Union and where they lived. Folks that I knew growing up in Kansas City, like Sonny Kenner, lived in Washington, Wheatley. Eddie Baker, who was a big influence on Anita, lived in Washington, Wheatley at one point. Many, many musicians like this, their homes have been demolished and they've gone unrecognized. And the reason why this work is so important to Anita and I is because we are both historic preservationists. We believe that you have to maintain your history to know who you are and where you're going. And so our goal was really to start putting this stuff on the map. Start putting it back into people's consciousness. Where are we when we say we're in Kansas City? What neighborhood? What are the landmarks? What did the people who built and maintained this neighborhood contribute to the world? To move beyond just people knowing about Charlie Parker, to know about so many other generations of musicians, right? Charlie Parker's the gateway drug to Kansas City jazz. That's cool, but there's so many other stories to share and to tell, and to not lose where those histories and those folks who carried the music, where they did their work. So you'll see up there the Casa Loma building on the corner of 18th and Prospect, which we did lose, unfortunately, which was home of Chauncey Downs and the Rinky Dinks and never should have been demolished. Now, what does this have to do with city planning? All of that research has to go into a strategy so that you can avoid demolishing the buildings and the places that matter. And that's how our work connects to the Kansas City Museum. It's how our work connects with economic development. It's how our work connects with the bigger picture of why we're here today. In 2013, Anita and I collaborated to connect with the Ben Webster Foundation. Ben Webster grew up right here in Kansas City, Missouri. Nobody talks about Ben Webster enough, and he really was one of the three tenors and one of the most important voices of modern jazz in terms of the tenor saxophone. And his house was demolished. In fact, I asked a saxophone student in one of my classes to go out and find every house that Ben Webster ever lived in, and all of them have been demolished. Okay, but what we haven't lost is the intangible culture of the music and how to teach and share that musical tradition. Anita and I connected with the Ben Webster Foundation, which is in Copenhagen. Yeah, that's right. What's up with that, right? Because he moved to Europe and never came back, really, and passed away on the road and was laid to rest in the same cemetery as Hans Christian Andersen in Copenhagen. And so Anita and I had a chance to reconnect with the Ben Webster Foundation. She was able to travel to Copenhagen to visit Ben Webster's final resting place and to reconnect and to bring Copenhagen back. And we brought a band back. This was all before we even applied to be a UNESCO Creative City, okay? In 2016, we started to do the research on World Heritage and on UNESCO by extending our understanding of the musicians beyond just Washington Wheatley neighborhood to other neighborhoods throughout the city. This is an example of Harlan Leonard. Harlan Leonard, really important with Harlan Leonard and the Rockets, and his home has also been demolished. This is part of Black Westport. Westport was a black neighborhood, and nobody's talking about Westport being a black neighborhood, okay? Steptoe, how many people grew up and how that was a predominantly African-American part of the city and how it's basically been demolished by St. Luke's, okay? The point of it is, I'm a researcher. I'm an academic, I'm a city planner, and I love music, and I love Kansas City. And the point of it is to teach young people this history, right? To bring people in, to share, to help expand our consciousness around the impact of Black American music in Kansas City, right? And to never lose sight of that, impact. So in 2018, after we applied and we got in, we were able to travel to Krakow to join the other cities and to really begin to understand what it meant to be a member of the UNESCO Creative City Network. And a big part of it is sustainable development. If you look at goal number 1, no poverty, goal number 10, reduce inequality, all of these things are going to require creative approaches because the things that we're doing now aren't working, in case you haven't noticed, right? So we've got to do something different, and we're not going to get there with artists, without music, without creative people, right? And they say, no music on a dead planet. If we're going to start addressing climate change, we're going to have to figure out new ways to work together. And that's really what this network is about. It's really folks in this room getting together with other people in other cities around the world and saying, hey, what's happening? What are you working on? But not losing sight that it's not just about, getting together and talking about music. It's about that higher purpose. We are here for a bigger picture in terms of peace, building peace, a culture of peace. UNESCO's key phrase is that basically that wars begin in the mind of women and men. So it is in those minds that we have to work to build peace. So UNESCO is about peace. It's about creating a culture after World War II. And now we're in this critical geopolitical moment again where we have to reinvent our relationships with each other and address this massive militarism that is deeply problematic, as we're seeing right now in Europe. So these goals are big, they're important. They provide a framework to think about all kinds of work that we're doing here and how our work in Kansas City connects with the bigger picture. What have we done over the last 4 years? One of the biggest things is to build authentic cultural exchanges between cities and between cultures. While we were in Krakow, Anita had the opportunity to meet some folks from San Cristobal de las Casas in Chiapas, Mexico. And they invited her to build a partnership and to connect over the marimba, which is an African instrument that is very popular in Mexico and Central America. And you can see these young people as part of the local choir there and symphony in San Cristobal. And we were able to send 4 musicians from Kansas City to San Cristobal. We had Lee Langston, Bukeka Blakemore, Brian Alford Jr., and Odell Talley represent Kansas City in San Cristobal, and to work with the choir and the youth in San Cristobal during El Dia de los Muertos Festival, and to raise awareness around the African roots of the marimba. This is what the UNESCO membership is about, right? It's about connecting to other people doing work around the world that is lifting up future generations and saying music for a higher purpose is how we're going to get through all this, all the challenges that we face together. And it was an amazing, transformative event. I'd encourage you to talk to any of these musicians. And we would love to have a budget to do this every year. We were able to fund this through our just going to former city manager and asking him to support it. And that's what paid to get these musicians down to Mexico. What else have we been doing? This museum has been a huge supporter of this work, especially during COVID-19. The museum was closed for renovations and has only recently reopened. And they allowed us to come in and to record concerts down on the first floor, and we created a program called the Museum Sessions together, with the idea of just featuring local musicians, giving them a good paying gig, having them come in, and then videotaping and promoting that music online. And so you'll see Amber Underwood here with Bukeka, Ariana Namadi, and Angela Ward for, I believe this was last year? International Day of Jazz, yeah. So the Kansas City Museum Sessions, you can check them out online through the museum's YouTube page. We also participated in Make Music Day for 2 years in a row in 2020 and 2021. In 2020, we did a project. It was just the beginning of COVID, and we were able to basically join cities around the world and have our musicians promote Kansas City music through YouTube through a day-long festival for Fête de la Musique. Fête de la Musique started in Paris. This idea of just getting people out into the city to play music together, to enjoy music, that's the heart of Make Music Day. Understanding that if people are participating in music, they're more likely to go out, support live local music. In 2021, we partnered with Kathy Pursley, there in the back, Heart of the City Neighborhood Association, to do a concert in Dunbar Park. Again, like Westport, there are many African American neighborhoods in Kansas City that go under-recognized, underappreciated, and under-invested in, and Dunbar, Heart of the City, is certainly one of those. Named after Paul Dunbar, the amazing poet, huge poet who was amazingly popular in the 1890s to the early 1910s, 1920s. Paul Lawrence Dunbar, who hung out with Fred Douglass, Ida B. Wells. Amazing impact. The Dunbar School and the Dunbar Park there. So very important heritage in terms of the history of Kansas City. So we were able to do cultural exchanges. We were able to involve my students in different research projects around UNESCO Creative Cities around the world. We've been invited to join our colleagues in Spain. We did the Voyage of the Drum with 19 different cities from around the world submitting a video focusing specifically on the role of the drum in music cultures around the world. And we did that last year online and in person at Dunbar Park. So this is some of the work that we've been able to do over the last 4 years. We were able to reach out and support our friends down in Nassau and the Bahamas. Fred Ferguson is there with Anita. We did a session called the Archives and Information, talking about music called Rake and Scrape from Bahamas, which often gets missed in people's enthusiasm for reggae. They often miss out on the unique music of the Bahamas. And after they were hit by a hurricane, we did an event here with the Bruce R. Watkins Cultural Heritage Center to help support the folks down with their recovery. Nassau is a city of craft and folk art, and Anita has had the opportunity to meet with Pam from down in Nassau. And so obviously this connects with climate action, goal 13 of the Sustainable Development Goals, music being an important way to address hurricane relief. In 2020, right before the pandemic kicked in, I was able to go to Burgos, Spain to look at their traditional drum corps there as part of the Voyage of the Drum. Burgos is a city of gastronomy, but they have this deep tradition of drumming this time of year with the high holidays. They have huge parades, and they always have local drum corps. So it's a great example of how folks who are firemen and teachers and you name it also participate in music through different cultures around the world. As I mentioned, in last year we did the Voyage of the Drum. This was a project that Anita had put into our original application. The idea was we would have a festival. We had to move that festival online in terms of all the other cities participating during COVID, but we were able to do that with more than 19 cities around the world participating. Music Export Poland was huge. Other cities, other countries have export offices that specifically focus on helping musicians travel around the world. We would love to see a music export office come out of all this work here from Kansas City to help Kansas City musicians travel and to build their international brand. All of this, again, for a higher purpose, focusing on the International Decade of People of African Descent, which goes from 2015 to 2014. A lot of these UNESCO initiatives go on, and we can connect with them in important ways to advance the work of racial justice here in Kansas City. We've also focused on gender equality. All of the different music cities have said we need to be part leading the change and making sure women are represented in the music industry, in the music economy, and focusing on the gender equality sustainable development goal number 5. These are all the different cities that joined us last year for the Voyage of the Drum. It was wildly popular. The Indonesians, though, beat everybody else out in terms of the number of streams. So you can certainly go on YouTube and see all these pretty amazing ways of expressing the drum culture across the world. Some of them are focused specifically on the African diaspora around the world, and some of them are very local to the local culture. They're all on YouTube. You can find them through the Voyage of the Drum and Music Export Poland. Okay, we also participated last year through the support of the Kansas City Museum with Paul Gutierrez and folks from Quentin Lucas's office and Mayor Bunch's office in a human rights conference, a global conference on the rights and inclusion of LGBTQ youth. So that was an important conference that went on last year. And we've done a couple other things, helping the museum out with their Restore KC initiative, participating in providing our own different conferences. Anita organized a Higher Ground conference last year to really focus on the role of music in terms of recovering from the COVID-19 pandemic. As I mentioned earlier, we did the Heart of the City Neighborhood Association Make Music Day. We're going to do that again this year. So we invite you to join us on June 21st over in the Dunbar neighborhood as well. Anita and I received a nice little recognition for all this work by Sound Diplomacy for a Public Service Award for leading Music Cities professionals. It sounds great. We were glad to have the recognition by Sound Diplomacy. They will join us tomorrow online to tell us more about what's going on with their new initiative, which is called the Center for Music Ecosystems. Okay, the framework for everything we do has 4 pillars. If you forget everything else, you might remember this as you walk out the door today. UNESCO Creative City KC is about 4 key things. Number 1, music education. If we're not raising up young folks to understand the music, understand the history of Kansas City, and everything people have done, we might as well not exist, right? So music education. Number 2 is preservation. As I said earlier, there's all kinds of Black American music heritage here in Kansas City that typically goes unrecognized. People always go to 18th and Vine, 18th and Vine, but it's much bigger than 18th and Vine. It's actually the whole city, from Westport to Dunbar, north to south. The impact of Black American music on Kansas City is undeniable, but it's also under-recognized, under-invested, underappreciated. We are missing the boat economically by not recognizing this as an economic development strategy that people will want to come to Kansas City to learn about this music. If Krakow can recover from World War II, 18th and Vine can recover from all the urban renewal and all the other you-know-what that has been done to 18th and Vine, okay?
That's right, amen.
Tourism, number 3. If we're going to have a tourism strategy and we're going to put millions or billions of dollars into new airports, into new streetcar technology, that is not going to give anybody a reason to come to Kansas City. It's not. But you know why people will come to Kansas City? 1823 Highland. And if you don't know that address, it's a Mutual Musicians Foundation Local 627 address, okay? They will come to Kansas City because of the work that the musicians in this room are doing, because they can know they can come to Kansas City and have a good time and connect with that history. It's not either or. It's not about just celebrating the past or just focusing on the music industry today. It is both of those things together. Creates a cultural heritage tourism strategy that will elevate Kansas City to people's attention. Because otherwise we're competing with LA, Chicago, New Orleans, and New York. If you want to compete at that level, you have to have an economic development strategy. That's what Anita and I have been saying. That's what we'll continue to say. And we hope that you'll become part of that team to say that music is an economy locally that we need to invest in. And it's also going to give people a reason to come see what's happening in Kansas City. Finally, music is a performing art. Music is about entertainment. Music is about changing people's perception of their day by transforming their emotional experience through music, right? So if we're not getting it right for the musicians who are providing that professional skill and service, then the rest of this isn't going to happen either. So we've always got to focus on the music economy. So that's what today is about. Thank you for letting me lecture. There will not be a test. You're lucky today. I appreciate your time, and thanks for having me on.
As a professor, he does that so good. You know, he just gets up and delivers. Now, we're going to take about 10 minutes, you know, get a glass of water and everything, because we're going to have our panelists up here. I'm very excited about this particular part, because the candidness, the people that we chose to be on this panel are very influential in the city, know exactly what they want to do, have been working in as many bubbles as the rest of us have, and can really, really, really enlighten us on what's happening on the sidewalk, what they say, soft white underbelly of Kansas City's economy for music. So give me 10 minutes and come right back.
The love and passion and desire for music. I also see that music is, just like everything, music is subjective, but I think we can all agree that music has the power to really get in and make an effect on every human. It's probably the most impressive thing. So when you have something like that, you have history like we have in this city, I would suggest, my personal opinion is that this city does not support the music the way that it should in the schools. You know, I think having music accessible is a responsibility of the city. I think the city, that will help the musicians that are in the city. It'll help inspire kids, and we all get activated by different things. Some students are not the best at reading a book. Some people are best being shown something to do. And music is one of those things that has the power to connect with students where maybe math and other things are not their strong suit. I think it's a disservice that the schools don't have more access, have more support for instruments, for music education. We look at a band room and we sometimes see 50, 60, 70 kids with one band director with no assistant. Right? I mean, that happens everywhere. It's not an exclusive issue to Kansas City, obviously. This is something that I see all over the country. But what Kansas City is uniquely positioned to do is, with its history and being the only city of music, we are empowered with an opportunity, I think. And I hope that the city gets behind that, supports education, and then supports the music, because that's the culture.
Melanie, we go back. I ain't gonna say. We do. In 1972, the union, American Federation of Musicians, consolidated in Kansas City. And the white union joined the black union, 34, 627. You were one of the first to join the new desegregated union. In that aspect, what did you see happen prior to and after desegregation? I'm really interested in hearing you say that.
Well, first of all, I'm hearing everything that everybody is saying, and before we even came up here, they were talking about the things that other cities have, you know, that distinguish them. Here in Kansas City, I feel like it's been by design, but for years, everything was erased. You know, Amber and people their age, they see the jazz district and it's like, you know, it's like part of the city. But I grew up with all of that. There was no jazz district.
Right.
It was totally erased. Everything, and like you guys are talking about tearing down buildings and things like that, trying to preserve them. I think this is great because I think the only thing that distinguishes us as far as tourist dollars that go to New Orleans and go to Memphis and places like that is the fact that they embraced who they are. We tried to erase who we are, and the thing that has happened, that we're playing catch up, and we should be on the forefront. So I'm glad that you guys are doing the things that you're doing, and I just stay in my lane. I'm an entertainer. I'm kind of like a conduit between Lester Young and Hot Lips Page and them to the people that are stretching the genre. I just stay in my lane, and I hope that I have something to contribute to pass the DNA on. But yeah, when I first joined the union, I mean, I couldn't play on the plaza, unless I would have been the black guy with a white band. I didn't, but it's like I've seen the city take on a lot of changes, and a lot of the changes due to efforts like yourself and Mike moving his company here, the Blues Society, the Jazz Ambassador. It all comes together, and if all of us will do our part and work together, I mean, I don't think it should be the Mutual Musicians Foundation and the Jazz Museum and then the Blues Society until we all embrace what we do, the producers, the new musicians, God, I can't even say it, elder statesmen. But until we all embrace what everybody brings to the table, I think that's when we'll understand it, because we have such a great history and such a great heritage and such an authentic, we should be at the table. Like you've said this for years, and I've been saying it. It's like we deserve, when you think of the four cornerstones of jazz, the fact that we have not gotten the tourist dollars and putting the attention on it, that New Orleans, that's the only difference. They embraced who they were, but I'm off my sword.
We'll stay on that. Doctor, I thank you very much. Those of you who don't know, Betty Miller was your aunt. That's jazz royalty. It's real. That's jazz royalty. I want to let people know that, because as one of the people who actually saw her perform, I was like, when I found that out, I thought, so you have the responsibility of a public school system that is steadily losing dollars, steadily losing people, steadily losing the embrace that I was told by one of the older musicians. There was no need at the American Federation of Musicians in New York. There was no need for them to go and look for young musicians, because it was always taught in schools. Okay, there was a lineage that was passed down from kindergarten all the way up. So by the time you got to be 15, 16 years old, you had established yourself in a band, you were going somewhere, you were on a music scholarship, you had something. You are a performer, you come from a legacy, you see this as a black woman in America. What those little numbers I just said tell you about what we need to do?
What's interesting is I lived in New Orleans for 7 years. I basically left Kansas City at 18 and got a music scholarship, and I went to New Orleans. And there, yes, it was a lot to learn about just being brown, being African American, living in New Orleans, trying to build my musicianship. And I started teaching in 2003. And my job was to teach kindergarten violin.
Oh my God.
Okay, so. I thought at the end I was going to need new teeth. Back molars just cracking every day. Little Johnny holding that bowl like a chili so I took what I received as in music in Kansas City. So I actually was introduced to the viola in 3rd grade in the Kansas City Public Schools at a school called Missouri. And it was a desegregated like magnet school. I still have my letter of acceptance. And at this school, I had private viola lessons, keyboard lessons. I took dance classes, and it was just so wonderful. But then like the next year, we moved to like South Kansas City. We moved to the suburbs, and so that's kind of when I started like traditional, orchestra and things of that sort. But what I knew for me as a Black woman, I wasn't going to get the education that I deserved being in Missouri. I needed to go to a HBCU. I needed to go somewhere where I was going to be celebrated for being Black. And someone was going to nurture me, and they were not going to look down on any type of, deficiencies I had. They're just going to nurture me and help me to make sure I get to where I need to be. So I graduated from Xavier. I went to the Peabody Conservatory, and I got my PhD in music education at University of Florida. And so, what I see is I'm still a Wallbashian. I grew up on Wabash, so I'm a Wallbashian, not a Kardashian. But I want to give my students, I want to give them those opportunities. And Amber,
she's doing a great job,
works every day for the kids. And I do understand where people are saying, well, what happened? I remember reading about it too. Can you imagine? I'm in different cities building up string programs and then listening to Kansas City news about what was happening here. And when you want to talk about the funding, well, we have these charter schools that we have to share these students with, but which charter schools offer kids fine arts? None of them, right? But we do, right? I taught band and orchestra at Northeast Middle School, at a 90-piece band, 90-piece orchestra. I mean, maybe we don't get the coverage, but we do have band, orchestra, and choir, and we have ballet classes, we have African drumming classes, we have African art classes, we have ceramics, we have all that stuff in Kansas City Public Schools.
Remind me to get back to that, because I think someone needs to do a report card on some of these charter schools about what they lack before they start talking about.
Please talk to Dr. Bedell about
Okay.
that.
Oh yeah, report card needs to be done, because I've been in a few of them thinking, do you guys ever see the light of day? You never can come out of here.
You know what? And I understand that if you grew up in the Kansas City Public Schools and you did not get the education that you thought, and so maybe you think, I'm not going to put my kids in those schools. I'm going to put them in the charter schools because I think that's a better alternative. Without really understanding what a public education does for you and how it's governed. We're in the schools every day as curriculum coordinators to make sure there is a viable curriculum, that kids are making the standards, or what we need to do to make sure these kids do rise up to grade level and beyond. And that's our job.
And Steve.
I'm
the entrepreneur, the venue owner. Those numbers we gave just not too long ago, what do they mean to the venue owner? What is that?
I'd love to see, I guess you gave a little bit about what Kansas City, or Missouri, Kansas means, but I'd love to see that kind of a report card economically. What are we contributing, and what, I'd be curious about it, that's all. But something to the tourism side of it I was thinking about. I see people come here all the time for shows, come to our venue. I see on the back end, people like, I'm driving 8 hours to come see the show, or I'm coming 6 hours. When I was young, we would go to Chicago to see shows because it wouldn't come here, or we would go to Minneapolis maybe. But we were like, stuff wouldn't come. And then when we first started, stuff would only come on Tuesdays or Mondays, or because where we're at in the drives. And I understand you want to be in the bigger markets on the weekends. That's changed in the 10 years that we've been open. I've seen it change a lot. I want to see it keep changing. So whether that means like what do we do with, how do we get our, the awareness through the tourism? Do we get help through Kansas City's tourist board, or is there a tourist board? I don't know. I know there's Visit KC, but how does that, like, I'm curious to see how that goes. All this is a lot of everything you're doing is, I'm like, all of you. I'm getting educated.
Well, we're the street team.
Yeah, I love it.
It's going to be the street
Stuff
team.
that, we just kind of head down, do what we do, and it's like, this is really awesome.
But one more note. But as a venue owner, COVID hit you hard. We had some recovery ideas. You just mentioned Visit KC. What do they do? Because they're still a membership organization. You still have, it's a pay to play. Let's just put it that way. Okay. What benefit can you still get? Because other convention and visitors bureaus across the nation have quit paid services because everybody needs to be on board. Okay, what do you think is, what have you been able to benefit from that situation at all?
We're not involved with Visit KC. I just brought it up because it's something I was aware of, but I've always wondered, like, we never paid for that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, nobody does.
Yeah.
Last 20 years, it has been like an obsolete way of looking at it.
Yeah.
Visiting, you pay for a membership and then they bring people to you. That is a very, very exclusive way of trying to bring money into your city when you only deal with people who pay you.
Right.
It's almost like, hey, pay me, I'll pay your record. So we're not trying to do that anymore. Okay, in 2018, we went a step further in Unesco and we went to the federal government and told them, hey, musicians need an apprenticeship. Come to find out, there was no such thing as a musician's apprenticeship in the United States. So it took us 3.5 years to convince the Department of Labor that musicians was an apprenticeable profession. This year, June, will be the first year that we introduced the American Music Apprenticeship Program at the Boys and Girls Club in Kansas City, Missouri. Okay, well, we will be training children to understand that you are going to be a professional musician. There is a number of things that you do to become a professional musician. Okay, this is not, we're getting pushback from conservatories. Go there. For what that's about. But as a gigging musician, okay, and I'm just gonna go random here. As a gigging musician, what do you think that an apprenticeship would do for the future of the education of music, specifically to you, Amber?
Well, I do feel like it'll expose children to a number of things. It really depends on how that apprenticeship is set up. So I feel like it can go two different ways, maybe the professional way track or the educational track. Say that kid wants to, get all those materials that they need to be like a recording artist or maybe a graphic artist or whatever. So you should be bringing in those people that are in that field and really surrounding them, putting their arms around and building up that child to be ready to be a professional artist. Or if you want to go in the educational route, maybe you want to be a professor of music or whatever. But whatever it is, it should be molding that child and being ready to be a professional in the fine arts, and not just in their specialty, but also teaching them the business side, teaching them how to market themselves, like the whole thing. I didn't get that. I went to a conservatory. And so I learned that on the way. And now I have colleges asking like, hey, Amber, can you come and speak about, this, because I didn't get this in my music program, or I didn't get that. So I think it should grab all of those tools, bringing in professors, bringing people like Joe or Adriana, and speaking to those kids and really have them hands-on experience with that. I mean, I wish I had something like that. My apprenticeship is my mentors, so I had to reach out to certain people that I admire, like my mentor, God rest his soul, was Horace Washington, or Hollenshed, and all these people that are Kansas City based, and just having to be like, can you teach me that, just being in their face, or like, or Craig Lindsay, that's one of our mentors, and I don't know if you know that name, but he is a pillar in Kansas City, and he has he has gold, silver plaques all over all the people, and so these are the things that these kids need to learn about and see, and so I think an apprenticeship program is highly needed, and I will not get into the conversation of getting into music schools or conservatories.
Mike, we talk about this.
Yeah, and I think that's some interesting. I had all sorts of thoughts going through my head just then, but music education, education in general, like we were talking about, people connect with different things in different ways. So there's a wide spectrum of things where conservatories and music schools are really, really important. If you're going to learn how to be an educator, you need that guidance. But there are certainly musicians that, if they had an opportunity for an apprentice program, it may be a lot more applicable for them in their journey to become a master of the craft. And music is kind of funny. We give tours all the time, and I always ask kids, what professional jobs are there out there that involve music? And so the first thing is, you could be a professional musician. Yeah, all right. What else? Well, you could be a music educator. There are band directors standing behind them. What else? Then they're in a factory, so the smart aleck says, well, you can make instruments. Yes, you can make instruments. You're at a factory right now. But there's so many other things. You got lighting, you got sound recording and audio engineering. You've got just the support. I say, the what they're wearing, how they look, their brand, the marketing, the selling of the band, the selling of the instruments, the selling of the microphones, the developing of the microphones, the audio software. If you're into software, there's just so many different things that you can do that involve music that are really, at the end of the day, a skill. You can go to any school, the best, finest in the world, and come out of there, and maybe you can play every single scale. But Bobby Watson will tell you, this is a bird thing, is that you need to have a deep relationship with your instrument. You have to have a deep relationship with the music, and then you have to have a relationship with yourself and something to say. And with an apprentice program, you can absolutely learn all of those things, and that's the only thing you can do to become a master. Not everybody possesses that, and to become a master craftsman, you start as an apprentice. So I think it's very applicable, and I think it will be. I think down the road, people are going to look back and say, "Wow, we don't know how to use it yet. We're learning. This is going to be the first year. I think this thing is going to be honed over the years." And looking back, I think this is going to be a very significant moment for the music industry.
Can I throw just one more tidbit in there? So if you're an educator, what do? You have a semester of student teaching, or if you're in maybe another career field that you normally have some type of period where you are under a mentor or something like that. And so why don't we not have that for what we do? And that skill. If you're going to be an esthetician or whatever, that's a skill, or a carpenter, that's a skill. They're under some type of apprenticeship to learn that skill. And so it's the same thing. And so it's definitely needed, and I do agree.
Well, it took us 14 tries with the Department of Labor in 3.5 years to convince them that this is a skill. Being a musician is a skill. And you can turn around, and you have levels that you go through. You have master craftsmen you could go to. You have apprenticeship. You have on-the-job training. You got all of those things. It took us 3.5 years and 14 tries. So it's like, well, I'm here and I ain't got nowhere else to go. So this question is for Steve and for Danny, because you guys have done this from another base. With infrastructure dollars being distributed, you guys hear about all the infrastructure dollars. Oh, we need new roads, we know that. Okay, good. Do you think our elected officials understand or see music as an infrastructure? You have venues, you have various, but you know, get ready, I've known you for years, so I'm trying to.
Political.
You know, political, exactly. Do you think they see music as infrastructure?
I don't believe so, no. I think they see it as just a place to get sales tax. That's it.
That's as honest as it comes.
That's it. I mean, but is it, yeah.
Music is not even on the radar. Not, I mean, in other areas it is. But in this area, music is not even on the radar. As I said, it's lumped in with the other arts as far as a structural analysis is concerned. It's very taken for granted. It's everybody looks to 18th and Vine, and which is the Mecca, and yet, you know, there's all this other work out here that's being done with these generative artists. This young man had to leave to learn his business craft of his music. And, you know, we did a survey in 2020 of our membership and had a really good response. And 70% of the respondents said they were professional musicians. Only 17% did it full time.
Wow.
And at the end of that survey, we asked them their needs, you know, do you need publishing? Do you need this? Do you need that? Do you need this? All the way down the line. And what we discovered is that the respondents, and I'm excluding the musicians that I'm sitting with here, they're world-class musicians and have a first grade education of the business.
Says a lot.
And you know, so a part of that, we started having these discussions, and I know Patrick and Kelly, they were part of this, about things like genre segregation in the community. You know, one genre not speaking to the other. That's all. And through those conversations, it all came down to one focus: is that there is nobody up here that's champion for everybody.
Amen.
And that was the culmination of the discussion. We did some programs during the pandemic where and I'll just give you one instance, where we had people sign up and we were doing COVID collaborations, and we were having songwriters writing songs together. They signed up, and we're multi-genre. We've got all genres in our organization. And we were teaming up people that didn't know each other from different genres. And the example I will give you is we had one young rap artist that we put together with 60-some-year-old country songwriter. And the country songwriter contacted us and said, "Are you crazy? What are you doing here? Why would you put me with this person?" They wrote a song, one of the best songs I've ever heard. And since that time, they've become best friends, and they're doing an album together.
Cool.
So,
Let me tell you, we went to, Jacob and I, we have an international award, Unesco does, and we honored a group called Gangsta Grass. Gangsta, if you don't know them, look them up. Gangsta Grass, a bluegrass and hip hop fusion group who are cold. Absolutely cold. And traveling the world doing bluegrass. Gangsta Grass is what they call themselves. Now, for the last 4 years, we at Unesco have based our research and implementation strategies for enhanced economic development and tremendous music history in jazz, or the music, as it goes. We did an online conference last year, and this question is for Anne Marie and anybody else who wants to jump in, really. But last year we did an online conference based on concentrating from recovery from COVID. This has been something that within the last 100 years has completely changed the entire world. Okay, the last time this happened, it was 1918, 1917. Okay, so 100 years later, we're faced with this thing that kept everybody inside, it's destroyed mental health and various things. But we put together the program to talk about we can recover. And we did these 4 things: education, preservation, tourism, and entertainment. And this building singularly And this crew here at the Kansas City Jazz Museum has redefined what museum is in the United States. Okay, museum is no longer the place that you go that they follow you around until you don't touch. Okay, museum is no longer the place where you can go and you have artifacts that were stolen from some Egyptian tomb 400 years ago and nobody said anything about it. You know, displaying cultural artifacts that nobody gave you the permission to do. You know, these are the things that have redefined. The Kansas City Museum is probably at the forefront of this development of what museum is today. And because of that, how important is preservation to this conversation that we're talking about now, Anne-Marie?
It's incredibly important. I mean, and we, you know, we focus on the preservation of stories, you know, the preservation of heritage and culture. And the way that I think we've been able to really be successful at reopening this building in particular is by bringing many people together, many perspectives, people at the table working together on content for the exhibits, on programs. Glenn North is in the audience, poet, artist, our director of inclusive learning and creative impact, recognizing the importance of artists in Kansas City's history and preservation, and actually ensuring that artists have a seat at the table, including, you know, artists of every discipline, including musicians. I agree with you that Kansas City needs a separate music strategy. We continue to create these arts and culture strategic plans. I think there might be another one in process. We collect data, we figure out where all the artists are, and then nothing happens.
Right.
And meanwhile, in New York City, they have a Creatives Rebuild New York City. $125 million going into the city of New York, paying artists to rebuild the city after COVID. We can completely do this here in Kansas City. We can restore and preserve our heritage, but we have to completely recognize the importance of creatives to this city. Kansas City has always been an international city. We don't need to debut it.
Right.
Turn around and act like nobody in the world knows where Kansas City is.
The new Midwest.
Right. And to really find a way to come together, but that's hard. We see it in the arts and culture sector. We see it in the museum sector. You know, there's kind of this myth that there isn't enough money to go around.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and that there's constant competition, and that actually doesn't exist. And I think we have to get to a place where, I mean, this is very powerful, everybody coming together. And this is sometimes what is very feared.
Yes.
By those who want to polarize and pit institutions and individuals against one another for a political agenda or, you know, some other, desire. So I think when we think about preservation, it has to start with us, the preservation of our talents and our creativity, and the preservation of ensuring that we come together as a community.
Absolutely.
I think that someone in the industry, you take a lot of meetings, and a guy used to tell me, I'm tired of taking a meeting about the meeting.
Yep.
And that's what Kansas City does. To me, I feel like we're having a meeting about the meeting with people that don't even know what we're really meeting about. And so now you have a whole bunch of people telling us what musicians, and they haven't even taking the time to develop their craft. They're just saying it could be money in this for someone, or you know, this looks good on paper, and they're not even inviting us in to have the meeting,
Right.
you know. And so, and then so we have a lot of people that are misplaced, and now we're not understanding why we don't have funds for this, and we don't have funds for this, and then now you have the community of musicians fighting for jobs. And we don't realize, and one thing I will say about LA, I learned to collaborate. Collaboration has been one of the biggest things for my life. And so now I'm trying to reach people, but the more I reach for people, it's like they think that I'm trying to take something from them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to say, here's a resource that I may have, let me help you, you can help me, I'm gonna learn from you, you can learn from me, we can all learn from each other. Now we have a melting pot of amazing things happening, and then we can start rebuilding our city together, but we're so divisive because we are fighting over crumbs, and there's billions of dollars out there for us,
There
and
are
we're fighting
billions.
over $100 gigs.
There are billions of dollars because tourism is so important to this. Whenever I see money being attacked from the culture and the arts and various things in Kansas City, and somebody say, well, we need that budget, so we need that money out of that pot. They always come for the people who are concentrating on creativity. They come for their money first, okay? Because they don't have time to fight you, okay? We don't have time to fight you. We got to get out here. We got children to train. We've got businesses to take care of. We got stuff to take care of. But if we could tap into this $877 billion out here, who'd have to fight another person for another daggone thing if we got 1% of it?
Can I say this?
Nobody.
I'll say this last thing. With my audio engineering class, I've been out of school since 1999. I graduated in 1999. I go back home to say, hey, I want to give this back. And it's exactly what you're saying. It's now where the community college that's in my hometown haven't thought of doing anything for the kids in the community. Now I bring a program and I'll present it to them. Now they're saying, well, we can partner with you to do this. And I'm like, where were y'all in 1999? Because I've been gone out of high school in the District 500 area since 1999. You guys wasn't proactive to create a program, and now someone's trying to come and it's about the dollar. I'm like, it ain't about the dollar for me. It's about these kids that want to do something that they're passionate about. I'm watching it change their life. I'm watching how they're looking at me and how they say, how did you do it? And I just took a chance. And so now we have, it's just, I want people that are creative to be able to step into place and be in their arena and really touch other people instead of it being about a dollar that they see they can make, or this program's going to bring in and we can pitch here, we're going to get this there. It's like, no, it's about the kids.
Right.
You know, so.
And I would say that a lot of it is simple for an entity like the city of Kansas City. It's marketing dollars.
Yeah.
It's strictly a marketing dollars that, you know, and I ran political campaigns for a long time, and it was an old adage, all politics are local. All music is local.
Yeah.
It's all local. It's these people right here. And if the city of Kansas City and other entities would just use marketing dollars to market that, then this young man and this young lady can go do their thing and create what they're going to create.
Now, Lonnie, entertainment. When we talk about this, what we're talking about now, you found a way to make a way, because somebody noticed, and Lonnie's Reno, which is my favorite date night if you've never been. If you have never been, I suggest you do it. Because when my husband was very old, when we decided we wanted to go out, it's like, well, what are we gonna do? Like, come on, get out of here. I'm going down here, Bassett. I'm gonna see my show. I'm gonna have a glass of wine. I'm gonna eat good, and I'm gonna watch it. In the entertainment, what we're doing, how can we get back to pure entertainment?
Wow.
I know. Because everybody out here, the musicians I listen to, they want to take it to the next level. They got these ideas and stuff. But some of them are the most boring children I've ever seen in my life. They get up there and they can play. It's like I can sing, but I can't sing. I can hold a note, but I can't sing. I'm not Chaka Khan. So what is purest of entertainment gonna get us in this music strategy?
Wow.
Because in my eyes, that's who you
Okay, well, thank you. And I'm gonna have to go. I'm glad you asked me this. Well, first of all, I want to say that I think that we all need to realize that music is a commodity, and it's a very valuable commodity, and it's a commodity that there are a lot of dollars, like you said, billions of dollars out there for. Now, when it comes to the musician or entertainer or whatever, I learned the hard way. I mean, I went through my time when I was, I just thought it was about me doing something that's extra intricate or playing the most difficult stuff, and it was basically me. Well, I can't use that word, but it was basically me just satisfying me. Now, and what I learned, like I said, the hard way, when you're 16 years old and you go to a city and they hire you to pack their club or whatever, and you get there Wednesday, and after the people see about you after the hype, and then you got the crowd, and then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, we got fired. And that happened a couple of places we went, because back when I was growing up, we couldn't even play at a lot of places here in Kansas City, so we had to go to Minneapolis and do. Anyway, bottom line is this. I think the average musician uses lingo like they don't support us, or they don't support the arts. I learned at an early age that what I do has to serve you. It has to be something. I mean, I don't go to Quick Trip to support their gas pumps. I buy a product that helps my car to move, and I want to get it. I know this is like first grade logic, but that's how I think. And as an entertainer, I think that people don't come here to support me. I think they're in here because, like Anita said, she wants to have a good date night. She likes Lonnie, but if I'm not going to help her to have a good date night, it's no reason to go see Lonnie. And so I always approach it, and ever since I was 17 years old and started getting fired, and I decided I don't want to be fired. I want to make that's another thing. I approach this as I want to make a living. That's why I always say God's so good to me. I'm a full-time musician. I make an okay living. And that's what I always wanted to do, make a living. Now, if you just are, and we all got different lanes. If you are just an artist and you just want to create, but then even you as an artist, you have to ask yourself, even though I can't use that word that some of y'all know where I'm going, you have to ask yourself, are you just doing something to build your ego, or are you really being creative? Because there's a difference.
Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, because I'm not trying to step on anybody. I just think that art for the sake of being artistic is garbage. I think if it's something that comes from inside you, regardless if it has a dollar value or anything, it will eventually be recognized. You can't deny what's real. Eventually, you gotta bow down to Miles Davis or Charlie Parker or Picasso. It don't matter if you get your dues right then. But when it comes from something deep inside, and me, my art is to try to figure out how. I mean, I don't come to the stage with a set list and that's it. I come to the stage with a set list and I don't play anything on it. I'm trying to read the room. It's like, it's like a lot of people will say, you got to know the room. I can't come here and just play John Coltrane, and I know that I would have a better response if I play My Girl. And I see you all doing that. Then, you know what? Then now you all understand that we here for the same thing. You might let me slip in a little John Coltrane. Hey, I like that. But I think it's, again, I don't want to be too wordy, but since you asked me as an entertainer, that's my thought process. And back to the mentoring thing, I remember years ago, Gerald Dunn talked to me, meeting for the meeting. We never did make it happen, but after he thought about what my thought process and how my brother and I would pack the Blue Room, and he would listen to the way I think, he said, you need to teach that. And
I was gonna say, there's an apprenticeship program.
Master craftsman,
But that is what I think. I think that because I did learn the hard way. When you get stranded in a city and you're sleeping in somebody's basement, it's a little bit different than if you're able to just be at home with mama and say, well, I'm not gonna play anything but John Coltrane. It's a whole different, so you figure it out. Either I wanna do a day job and I wanna just play what I wanna play, or I wanna be a full-time entertainer. And my lane, like I said, it's a natural lane for me. I'm about as Kansas City as you're gonna get. Anita, ever since I was a teenager, I've been preaching the Kansas City thing. When there was no jazz district, I was always talking about How to Live Page, Charlie Parker, Lester Young, Ben Webster, Mary Lou Williams. All these people have been a part of my vocabulary because of my father mentoring me. Again, the apprentice thing. That's so essential. And I've been too wordy, but I'm sorry if I got to that.
I'm just glad this is gonna take, because this is the kind of thing that you can't, anyway, I know you said you had to go, and you just.
Yeah, I gotta go in about 10 minutes.
Okay,
I apologize, you guys.
I've got one really quote-loaded question for everybody, and we'll start left here again. Does anyone see how race plays a role in how the economics for the music is going in this city? And is this something we need to address?
I mean, I think you continually have to address it, but we've always tried to be multi-genre at Record Bar. Like, we do all kinds of stuff all the time. And I mean, I could say economically, I mean, the shows that deliver are the shows that are more diverse, the shows that are more that people remember and bring more of our community together. Those are the shows that are more diverse. I appreciate that. I love it. I think Kansas City. For me, I feel like, I don't know if it's a movement, but like, I mean, you go to the Ship, it's pretty diverse. I think these are places that everybody has to be aware of it and do it, but I think it becomes natural too. So I don't know if I'm answering the question, but.
Well, from the perspective, I'm not trying to pin anything down. This is one of the most diverse groups we're going to get. Next.
Music is a luxury.
Ah.
I mean, especially if you think about the price of an instrument, the price of private lessons, the price to go to Kaufman, the price to go to music camp. It's just so expensive. It's exclusive at this point. And that is what, goes into, factoring for children to be able to do it. Even going into music is a luxury, right? Because I went to a college where it was, med school type stuff. And I wanted to be a musician. People are like, why would you want to do that? You're not going to make a lot of money, because, so it's a luxury even doing what we're doing, right? And so, when you think about the younger generations, like, how do we, inspire them to do something that just seems so exclusive that no one wants them to do it, right? And so I started a nonprofit called Marshall Music Foundation, and we had a camp, an all-girls fine arts camp. And I took the kids from Kansas City Public Schools, and the camp was housed at St. Teresa's. And these girls were looking around at this beautiful campus and the chef in the kitchen and the statues and, just wanting to be there and wanting to see that and, playing in the concert hall, the lights work, right? Which, is just something that we're having some issues with some of our theaters. But, you know, I do see in the Kansas City Public Schools, we have spent over $500,000 in the last few months on instruments. We have spent about $200,000 on music technology. We actually have music technology classes, and our students are learning how to produce music. They're learning how to do podcasts. We are in the process of building out music studios. We're going to start having students take piano in 3rd grade, so we have kids who can audition because they'll be music literate. But that's what we're trying to do in our district for our kids. So to give them an equitable music education, right? Because we might not have children who can afford to rent instruments and to buy the books. And in our district, we try to provide those things for them. So it's not such a luxury.
London, 34,627. If you ever see a musicians union that has 2 numbers, 34 is like here locally. One used to be what they call the colored musicians union, which usually comes second, and the first one was the white musicians union. In 1972, they were all ordered to desegregate. From the time they were ordered to desegregate until now, what happened to the presence of the black representation in unions?
Oh, wow.
Going to the question of race.
Well, the first thing is that the music, there almost is no musicians union in most cities now, and here in Kansas City it's not even relevant. I mean, if they do, wow, that's such an interesting question, because if they do have any relevance, it would pertain to traveling artists that may come here and go to play at Starlight Theater or at the Kaufman Center, and they pick up a few musicians, and if you're in the union, which most of us are not anymore, but if you're, oh God, this you going deep today, because if you're a part of this, again, we talk about an exclusive group when it shouldn't be like that, but like she said, 34,627, and then when things started to dissolve for us, the importance of the union, then you basically just had a select number of people that all of the unionized gigs would go to.
Right.
And yeah, that's a whole different thing right
What
there.
we'll address very soon.
Yeah.
Very, very soon, because that is a specific part of what has happened to jazz music, jazz venues, rock and roll, country western, you name it, what has happened with the lack of representation from a 109-year-old organization called the American Federation of Musicians. But if you're going to be a traveling musician internationally, you must belong to a union like the International Brotherhood of Musicians and various things like that, which a lot of us do not know. So, you know, I hear a lot of these young cats say, yeah, we can ready to go to France. Well, you can only stay there 3 months because they're going to kick you out because you don't belong to the union. What happened to that? We did get to the bottom of that. That is another program that we will be doing soon. But Mike, you and I have talked about the opportunities in this. What do you think about how race plays a role in what we're doing?
I would echo the inequity. You know, music is a luxury. It requires money and funding. And while, for example, while the district is providing instruments, which is great, do the kids have access to after-school lessons? Maybe they don't have the opportunity for having a parent bring them to lessons. So now music lessons is something that's not available to them. I brought my son recently on his 12th birthday to hear Lonnie, which is amazing. I think more parents need to bring kids out to live music, but is it accessible to bring musicians in the city? Are there venues that are available for kids at night? You know, maybe there needs to be venues in the daytime that make it more accessible for kids, again, to inspire them. So I come back to, it all comes down to, it's not equitable. I see that.
Yeah.
Lonnie said something and Amber said something. It's about having to be so good that they can't tell you no. But even then, it's just like I have to live up to high expectations for you to even let me in your venue. And so now I'm finding myself having to do be so solid that all the venues that they tell us that you can't get in, I'm like, I'm gonna be so good that they have to let me in the venue, you know. And it's kind of one of those things, and that is me being blessed because I had a mentor by the name of Craig Lindsay who taught me, Joe, there's 8 ways to make music in the music industry. You just don't have to do, but you gotta be great, be good. They come from a different era. Lonnie, it was about being precise, it was about being on point, knowing your cues, knowing your cues. They were so good at what they do that people just couldn't, you can't tell Lonnie no, you know, he's that good, you know, you're not gonna tell him no to come in your establishment because he's gonna bring in the people, but everybody don't have that luxury.
Right.
And so there is an imbalance, and so just opening up more opportunities and some doors that we haven't been able to get into, and if you do get into those doors, you just have to have a level of greatness that they're like, okay, we have to, and that's a good thing as well too. But it has to be something where it's like, let's give people a shot, you know, let's let people in and include them as well.
Oh, wow. I come from a different standpoint just because I'm not a male jazz musician. I come from a minority Black woman, and so my training started in classical music. I was always known as the Black flute player, or you know, you always knew who I was because I was the only one, and then transferred over to jazz. But it was difficult just to be recognized as just not a gimmick, I guess. And really having to prove on the jam session that I can play just as well as any of these other male musicians up here. I was always thought of as the singer, nothing against singers, but we don't have a lot of female or girls on the instrumental side. They might take music in the schools, but where are they on the professional level? If you go to a concert, I'm looking behind the singer, like who's playing the drum, you know, it's mostly male. And so I knew I wanted to change that. And then when I got to a professional level and then started knocking on the doors of like, hey, can you hire me? Like, can I perform here? Can I perform at the Blue Room? Can I, you know, and it was just like, you know, and today it's still a struggle. And I don't know if it has to do with my race, my gender, or my ability. But I do feel like there are still a lot of doors, at least for me to knock down, you know. And another thing, a lot of people say about collaboration. I think I've gotten to be in different arenas because I have collaborated with different genres and coming in and doing that and really creating my own lane because I can rely on, the music venues. Like, and then I'm like, well, why am I not seeing more of me at the Kaufman Performing Arts Center? Or why is it that, you know, they have a show, but they're not grabbing the locals to open up the show? I am just as qualified. You know, my dad always said, if you're gonna go into music, make sure you have all of the areas. So I got a degree in education and arts administration and music business and teaching. And so you can't deny me of that, but I'm also a skilled player. And so it's just kind of like, who else do I have to show or prove that I am worthy to, number one, be in this establishment, but worthy that what I have to say through my instrument is what it needs to be heard. So, you know, it could be a number of things, you know, and it's still a fight today. And then being acknowledged as a band leader. I'm just saying that I am one of the only, I don't want to say only, but first of all, minority Black woman band director, instrumental on both sides of the state line. And number two, I had my band, Flutie Nazis in the Soul Patrol, where it's led by a woman. I'm not a singer, but instrumentalist where we're performing weekly, you know, in different places, and just having that acknowledgement. So I don't know, it's still a struggle. I'm still climbing. I'm still trying to, you know, figure it out.
What I love about what every one of you said right here, I specifically said race. I specifically said race. It has never failed, and I knew it was gonna, it has never failed that question among artists has never been one of, yeah, they trying to hold us down. It has never been that with musicians. It's always been recognizing the obstacles and knowing that music would take them over it.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm really impressed with the way that went down, because you can have all kinds of experiences. I've had experience, I don't sing, I don't play an instrument. I have an incredible love for the things that you guys do. So I sacrifice to be certain that it's always there. Thus, I get treated differently because I've been told, what right do I have to do that? Well, I'm a human being that feeds and literally thrives off of what all of you do. And if I can't feed and thrive off of that, I die too. Okay, so I can't afford to let that happen. So I'm the person who's out here who's doing this and looking at that and pulling up stuff and filling out applications and putting out contracts. But with that, whose responsibility is it? Okay, we're getting ready. This is really going to be the bridge we cross over, y'all. Okay, whose responsibility is it to get this building, this music strategy done? Do we keep going to the top and keep hearing the same thing from the people who will not understand what this is, or doesn't want to hear what this is because they're cronyism? Or, oh, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you, Dawn. Whose responsibility is it? Okay? How are we going to go to these people and say, from now on, y'all, okay, y'all gonna listen to the things that we have to do to get us a music strategy? What does that mean? We have gone to the city and asked them for a number of dollars from here to start developing the program, start developing the music strategy. We have actually, tomorrow, April 14th, will be the professional that we've asked to come on board, Shane Shapiro, to guide us internationally through this. We've got about 90, how many people have signed up, Jacob? Is he there?
Oh, I lost Jack. It's
Okay. We've got quite a few people who have signed up around the world to hear about this because they want to support Kansas City in building this strategy, because they see that feeding off of us thrives and makes them thrive too, because we are the epicenter of the jazz that they love so much. So with that, whose responsibility do you think it will be from here? Do we trust other folk in saying what they'll do or not, or do we just steamroll?
We steamroll.
Yeah, go ahead. We
I
tried.
was just saying, we've already tried it, didn't work, we gotta steamroll it.
You know, it's time. With all that you've seen today, do you think we got enough to steamroll?
Yes, yes. It's the same thing with, we are fighting right now for our rights with, you know, as being a music producer and a writer. We're not getting paid what we're providing. We're providing
Right.
services to anything, every platform, for social media, whether it be movies, whether it be, you know, commercials, and we're getting pennies on the dollar.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to fight, and if we don't, they're going to continue. Spotify's going to continue taking the money. These labels are going to continue taking the money, and we're not going to eat off of it. And they're going to be like, "Thank you, keep giving, keep being creative. We'll keep taking it until we stand up and say no, no more."
Yeah, well, this is
Well,
today.
and I think too that there are so many music organizations out here that are representing components of the music ecosystem, that they all need to be brought into an umbrella to march to the Capitol steps, if that's what we got to do.
Yeah. We'll march with a band. We've only got a few minutes for a few questions. I know you guys got something.
Well, sorry, I had a comment, but it's not really a question. Just on the advocacy. So I'm Alex Mallett. I work for Folk Alliance International, and we're based here in KC.
Hey.
So one thing that I wanted to say on a positive note is that at this moment, because of the shelter venue operating grant, it saved a lot of a lot of venues and a lot of art professionals, there's an advocacy window opening up. You know, the door is just cracked right now. But it's the first and the largest example of cash infusion into the entertainment industry of all time. And it just happened. So, and it happened on both sides of the aisle, which we all know how rare that is these days. So there is a moment now for advocacy that I think is pretty unprecedented. And I think finding ways to kind of bring that energy into our political systems, there's things that can happen and that will happen.
Oh, absolutely. We
So
have to be
sorry, I just
consistent.
wanted to share that. I was thinking about what Joe was
We
saying.
must be consistent. There cannot be any more of this, you know, come to the meeting for the sake of being at the meeting. You know, I call them chicken wing parties. You know, oh, did you get your chicken wing? Yeah, I got my chicken wing. So what are we gonna do now? You know, go ahead, Patrick.
And I'm just so honored today. I think this is awesome. Freaking great doing that. I'm down with the steamrolling strategy, and I hear you about meetings. I just keep going back to what you all are saying about education. And I just gotta believe, as a former educator, that's where it starts. Who doesn't like music and value it? And so I think sometimes what we do in the city is we start going to the same philanthropic organizations. And I know Mayor Lucas has got a lot on his plate. I get it. But we start expecting maybe that cash, but it's like, how do we get the commerce involved here? How do we get our Chamber of Commerce to sit down and hear some of these numbers you've thrown out, hear from people in all different occupations, including the school district, like we're providing instruments. Families want these things for their children. Families come down to the foundation, and even you know, and they see this. I never knew about this place. It's like, it's not just about making money, it's about growing it and providing artists in whatever realm of the industry and profession they're in a living wage. You know what I mean? So we don't bleed talent. And I just think that, yeah, the steamroll is great, but you gotta have some sort of person that has dedicated time to do that, to lead, delegate, go, Anita, go. And make it happen.
I will do it. That's what I'm dedicated to.
I have questions. I'm also a former educator. I'm actually one of the former charter school principals in the area, so I'd love to talk about that, but the ecosystem and think about how to be better with it. I have so many questions. I'm also a Wyandotte guy. Okay, so I want to talk some Wyandotte. You're also Wyandotte?
Yes.
Okay. Let's talk. Okay. But I would love to get into the weeds. I'm curious, with all the real world learning in Kansas City and that work, how, because you kind of alluded to all the different professional skills in the field, right? And I think you're absolutely right, that education is it, right? When people learn something early on, they value it for the rest of their lives, they're more willing to spend money on it, all of that stuff. How is that's been happening in a lot of people outside of education in KC don't know about real world learning and what's going on with Kauffman Foundation, that effort. How is that affecting what you're doing leading the work in KCPS?
I mean, it's actually helping to enhance what we're doing. So we have the Career Technical Education, CTE, and that's at Manual Tech. And we do have broadcasting classes there. You know, they get a separate pool of funding. And so they are helping us with these, with the music technology component. They're also helping with some of my health classes to get the student certifications before they graduate. And they do take the real world classes. We have this summer, we have a lot of like experiences on field trips and social justice projects that should start in elementary school. Because we really want our children to have a well-rounded education. And you know, it's part of the Blueprint 2030 and how we are going to just elevate what we're doing in Kansas City public schools and for our community. And it's for the kids there now, and it's for kids to come back home to the district, you know, and get the quality education.
And what you're saying about the real world learning is, and with my audio engineering class that I'm doing, it's certified. It's through UCM, they certified it. The kids who walk off as certified engineers. They're going Pro Tools website to be engineers. And I'm battling with the board to approve it. Something that the kids want to do. I'm over here, I've canceled my trips from LA. I'm like, this is where I want to be. I'm a guy who left to come back. And I'm with the board members that are blocking this because they don't understand. Well, we can put money. I said, you're putting money in everything else but what the kids want to do. And I get calls from parents, I get calls from these students, I'm getting text messages, I'm getting emails from everywhere. And what is going on with the class? In the real world, in the field, in real world learning, I'm like, I'm trying to apply something that I know students want to do. And so, but it's like, when you say that, you know, let's get with the educators and like, I want it because the education is it. I want to be able to teach what I know. Well, Craig Lindsay taught me, all these other guys to instill this stuff in me so they don't have to be in debt. Going to a full sale, $50,000 in debt, and now they're stuck trying to figure their way out. I'm saying we can give them that kind of education here. But they're battling, they're fighting us, so.
Okay, so my question is that, I mean, we all know what we want and need to be, but how do you change, and this is such a cliche, how do you change the hearts and minds of the patrons?
Yeah.
How do you get those people invested? How do you get those people to say, yes, I want my tax dollars to go here? They don't, we need to educate the public, and that is such a hard thing to do, and I work at the Ballet Theater, we've got a long ways to go to get things right for us, and to get patrons to come to shows that they've never wanted to come to before. How do you do that?
You know,
I mean, to get money in education, you have to get parents to say, you know what, my kid learning guitar in school is really a great thing. They have more of a chance to go somewhere than playing football.
Yeah.
The other thing is that what I've noticed works, and what's been working for us at Unesco as we began to, you know, bring an awareness of what we're doing, is showing somebody what somebody else got versus what you do. Okay, compare and contrast is a beautiful way to present something. Okay, beautiful way. Okay, look what they've got in Nashville. Nashville just got the African American Music Hall of Fame. We can't get this little thing off the ground. And then people start looking like, oh, really? Yeah. New York just sent $125 million directly into the hands of their musicians. Let's see. How does that look for us? You know, the economy of New Orleans for their music strategy is X amount of bop compared to us. You know, when you do a compare and contrast and you're able to get out there and show them the potential that we have though, because we've got everything they've got. Everything they've got.
And more.
And more. We just have to get them to see the lack of them not being able to access it and knowing it's not our fault.
Yep.
Pointing whose fault it is.
I would just add one layer to what you're saying, which is, you know, while I was a high school principal, last few years I've been an educator, I'm probably the only gigging musician that's also a high school principal in town.
Okay.
And so thinking about also what does it mean to have a lifetime of music and value it, right? And to see the connection and see the value in kids learning how to harmonize with each other in a choir class. And how that leads them to being able to understand each other's emotions more in a hard conversation. And we have so few leaders that understand this in education across the board, the power of what it means beyond the entertainment and what it means for everything else.
And that's measurable.
Couple things I wanted to touch on. We were talking about the instruments and making sure the students have what they need and stuff. A couple years ago, I was the IT lead for the Kansas City, Missouri School District, and you were talking about manual. I walked through that building. My office was in there. There's an auditorium full of instruments that everybody completely forgot about sitting there. A couple of years ago, I went to Central, I went to Paseo, I graduated from Paseo, and I brought them a curriculum for broadcasting, for audio engineering, for radio production. They laughed at me. Pandemic hit. My phone rang. Hey, all the stuff you were talking about, it matters now. Would you come show us? The Plaza Academy called me over and they said, create a curriculum. I put together an audio engineer program. I was teaching kids contracts, you know, which is the most important part of all this. Yes, make the music, be a hobbyist, enjoy yourself. And if you're gonna make money off this, you need to know what you're doing. You need to know the terminology, you need to know your royalties, you need to know everything. That's where it starts. We don't offer any of that in any of the schools. We'll teach you how to play stuff. We might teach you how to record. We used to have one recording class in Paseo in 1998, Mr. Ransom. And if you weren't one of his favorite people in the school, you didn't get in. It wasn't just you could sign up and get in. Waiting list was long, and if you weren't a favorite, it didn't happen. So if we're gonna show the kids how to make the music, we need to teach them how to own the music. And so all of this is great, but I feel like that's the seed we need to plant.
Absolutely.
The first step, music education. Yes, theory, yes, you know, instrumentation and all that, but like owning yourself, owning your business, owning your brand, trademarking your name, owning your logo, your designs, like that's all the important stuff.
But then, if I offer that, but
And see, that's where we need to.
It goes back to what she was saying. We have to get the community to get on board and see the value in what that is. I see people get robbed of their publishing every day. Every day. And I'm like, yeah. I see, you know, myself, I'll give you, I've invested in people. Didn't have a contract with them when I was doing everything from my heart. Lost out on $15,000. Those are the things those are hard lessons that I had to learn. But now I'm like, never again, because it's the music education. It's the business part. It's all the aspects. It's teaching it. It's all those things coincide together. So but we got to educate the people in the community that don't really understand.
I want to address the instruments. Those are not there anymore.
Oh, that's good. Did they do something with them?
I've only been the coordinator since July 2020. Okay, so when I went in and I saw that, let me let you know what I did.
Did it hurt your heart too as well?
No, I knew a little bit about. You don't know how many rooms were in there.
Oh, wow.
But let me let you know something. We did a district inventory assessment, and every single instrument has been assessed in the entire district. And that report was put together by 3 different vendors who went out to every single school, including Amber School, and looked through the instruments. And we had we had charts and everything how to assess the value. And then after that, the instruments that were deemed repairable, we've been repairing and putting them back in the kids' hands. So that room doesn't exist anymore.
But it took you getting in there to get it.
It took me getting in
Okay, well,
there.
let's do that.
Yes.
Let's say that.
I want to add, we, in our discussions with our network people, to the point of your business, we tell them, look, that's part of your art. You know, when you create art, you create a spreadsheet. That's part of your art, is that creative. And if you don't have the wherewithal to do that, learn it or get somebody close to you to help you.
That's right.
And that's the hardest thing to get across that to some of these artists. That, there's somebody in your circle, in your sphere, that's willing to sit down and do this for you, and put your team together.
Emery, did you have something? Yeah, I was just going to, when we started the Kansas City Museum project, we had so many people tell us, move the museum out of the Northeast community. Move it. Move it to, move it to Crown Center. Move it to Johnson County.
Move it to the Raceway.
And
Move it to Wyandotte.
I think we have to, this museum is for the entire metropolitan area, but we are in the historic Northeast, which is comprised of 6 neighborhoods. We have a huge refugee population. So I just want us to remember that when we talk about musicians and creatives, the city is filled with creatives, and it's how are we recognizing who those creatives are, because they're in every single one of our neighborhoods. And at the neighborhood level, I think we have to understand the identities of these neighborhoods, the resources that are in them. What about all the community centers that don't have a lot of programming? Could we be doing music programming in our community centers? What about all of the abandoned school buildings? What about all of the properties that are sitting around? Where is there a community, benefits agreement with all the investors who come into this city and take and take and take and don't give back into the community?
Don't give back anything.
So there is a lot of opportunity that I think we also have to recognize holistically all of the cultural assets and resources and people that are here. Think about the people who have brought their cultures and their music and their art with them to Kansas City recently, like in the past 5 and 10 years. But we do need strategic partnerships. The city has to get involved. Cultural institutions, education institutions, we have to steamroll, but we have to have strategic partnerships so that we can get to the residents in these neighborhoods so that they can advocate and they can feel represented.
I guarantee you that if the community benefit was at 1% of everything that was given,
Yeah,
they would fund it all.
yeah.
Fund every dime.
They would fund
Every
it all.
dime.
I will say I appreciate what you're doing because what the pandemic taught us all is we all missed the factor of being entertained.
Yes, we did.
Yes.
I know I did. We'd like to thank once again our partners, particularly this partner who's been with us since the beginning of this thing, Kansas City Museum. Thank you so much. We have recently made it to the coffers of the city,
Good.
so we were putting it on the budget. How about that one? They didn't want to do that at first. I don't think they knew about it. And so they started getting letters from across the world saying, why aren't you guys doing this? We're doing it here in da. So they paid attention. This does not end here. As a matter of fact, we plan on doing something every 2 to 3 months because online is not costing us anything barely. We have wonderful partnerships where we can gather now again. We have strategic things put in place, and all goes well and the creek don't rise, and we get this rebuild dollars, then we will be moving ahead quickly with a study on the building a music strategy. If we don't get it, we will still be doing that because it only makes sense.
I have a question. For this funding for the study, is that a part of what the city's committing to? Or is it?
Is that a part of the city?
No, or where, how is to get the study on a music strategy,
Right.
is that a part of the city's commitment? Or are we kind of looking for?
We've made the
funding?
request, we haven't heard it, we haven't heard it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Right.
gotcha.
Right, we made a request, and
Okay.
that's only because it just wasn't on the radar.
Yeah.
You know, just like, what's the music strategy?
Yeah.
You know, and why do we have to get that out? So we're hoping that get that through, but see, there also are corporations and
Yeah.
people that we're working with now that want to see this happen also.
Good.
So regardless as to what they do, we will be doing a music strategy. It might take us a little bit longer, but we're used to that. So we're dedicated to it. So that concludes what we do. Now tomorrow, if you'll go online, if you have the information that was sent on the Eventbrite, you'll be able to hit the Zoom, thank God for Zoom, and listen to Shane Shapiro, the leading ecosystem builder in the world at this point. And thanks to him, he agreed to do this for us. And then there'll be a number of countries who are music cities also, who will be tuning in to talk about what their challenges are, how we can all work together, and they specifically came together because we asked them to. So I'm very, very excited about that. But that concludes, thank you guys for